nataka tumjue kwa undani. Kocha ana mke, kocha ana mpango wa kando, kocha anakula nini hapa Kenya? Ahlan wa sahlan kwa mara nyingine mtazamaji, na karibu tena katika kipindi chako cha Arocho Live. Ni Jumaa nyingine ambapo tuko na gwiji wa michezo hapa nchini Kenya. Tuko na kocha mkuu wa Gor Mahia, Johnathan McKinstry. Welcome to Arocho Live, coach.
Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to have you. Now, coach, tell us something about Johnathan McKinstry, because the only thing very few people know about you. The only thing we know is that perhaps you're coaching in Uganda and in Rwanda. Who is Johnathan?
Yeah, well, there's a long answer and a short answer. I think for me, look, I'm a football lover first and foremost. You know, my life has been sort of guided by football. You know, from a young age, I wasn't quite good enough in Northern Ireland to move from the academy level into the professional playing level to move across to England. So I decided I wanted to try and commit myself to coaching. So almost, at the time, there wasn't that many examples of, you know, coaches who hadn't been professional players. Now there's plenty of them. You see so many. Obviously the likes of Mourinho and Nagelsmann are very obvious, but there's so many now. But for me at the time, I thought, let me focus on this, let me qualify, let me practice. And initially the ambition was maybe just to work in academy football. But things, you know, lead on one from the other, and I got given opportunities, and I moved into the professional game now, I think about 10 years ago now. And yeah, from that, it's taken me around the world. Kenya's the 10th country I've lived in.
Wow.
And, you know, I've loved every minute of it. But for me, you know, football's a huge passion. Also getting to know the different cultures I find myself in is a huge passion. But yeah, you know, I like to think I'm quite a simple person. You know, I'm not too complicated, but for me, you know, football is a huge driver in my life, and you know, that's what drew me here to Kenya and to Kogalo, was the opportunity to work with this famous team.
Before we move to Kogalo, coach, I'd like us at least to reflect how your performance back in Uganda and in Rwanda. You're one of the coaches that revolutionized the Ugandan game. What is your secret, coach?
I think for me, it's largely about connecting with people. You know, it's very easy to come in and only think about football and only think about the tactics and technical side of it. And look, that is hugely important. But I think the modern game and the modern player needs someone who connects with them on a human level, and so that you understand. Because look, if you treat a player for only those 2 or 3 hours a day that you're on the grass with them, there's another 80-90% of that player's life that you've got to understand, and we cannot separate these things. In all of our lives, what happens outside of work impacts on what happens inside of work. And I think if you connect with people on a human level and understand their background and their culture, not just as a nation but as an individual, then it helps you reach them more, and it helps them come on board with your ideas and your thinking. But I also think being flexible, you know, I have my philosophy of football, as we all do as coaches, but that cannot be written in stone, because whilst I think, you know, we still have to build it here in Kenya, but if you look at how my teams in Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Uganda, and Asia and Europe have played, they play all a similar style of football, but there are key differences. Why? Because the players we have in each environment are different.
It's different,
so you have to be flexible. And I think that's true of anyone. You even look at someone like Pep Guardiola. His philosophy has never changed, but his Barcelona, Bayern and Manchester City teams play different types of football because they have different players.
Different kind of players.
Yeah, I think that flexibility has helped us bring some level of success to every environment.
Okay. Coach, let's move on to your life. We've talked about your early life and the life that you had in Uganda and in Rwanda. Let's move close to Kenya. Why Gor Mahia? Before I talk about your family, why Gor Mahia? We have several teams. And how did you come to know about this great team, Gor Mahia?
Yeah, I think first of all, you know, my understanding and knowledge of Gor goes back many, many years. Even when I was in Sierra Leone 10, 12 years ago, some of the people we were working with had a history here in East Africa. And so you got to know about Kogalo at that stage.
Wow. So you knew about Kogalo when you were in Sierra Leone?
Yeah, so I think, you know, The nature of Gor is that it's one of the historic storied teams across Africa.
Wow. Kogalo, mnasikia?
Yes.
One of the historic teams in Africa.
And this is the thing, and not even just for me who maybe reads a lot about football around the world, but when I took this job, when the announcement was made, I was getting text messages from all over, from people in Asia, from people in Sierra Leone, from people in America. And one, it was congratulations for the new position, but also they knew about the team. Even some messages from Asia were like, this is a big team.
Wow.
So it's a club that's known not just in Africa, but also to a degree in different parts of the world. And so for me, I've known about the club for a long time. In a more close relationship, when I was coach of Rwanda, we obviously had some players here. Abuba Sibomana was playing.
Yes.
And in fact, I recommended Jack Tuasengi to the club because
Wow.
I was over watching Abuba.
Wow.
And the club, I can't remember who, but one or two members were saying we were in the market for a striker. Do you have any recommendations? And I said to them, I was like, well, look at this boy Tuasengi. He's a number 7 in the Rwandan league.
Wow.
But we are, with the national team, transitioning him to be a number 9. We think he has quality as a 9.
And in fact, he became one of the best strikers in Kenya.
Exactly. And not only for his quality, but for his character.
Wow.
I think his character is someone who's very serious, who's very...
A professional.
He's a professional.
He puts a lot of work, into his game.
Exactly. And so, that's going back now to, what's that? That's like 2015. So 7 years ago, where I first visited here to watch Gor play. And even then, in my head, I thought to myself, you never know where your path in football will take you.
Yes.
But I thought to myself, if there is an opportunity in the future to maybe work with this team, I think it could be interesting.
Wow.
I think my passion for the game, my skills, could maybe complement this team to help take us to a new level. And even now, coming in at this point, the conversation of maybe coming to Nairobi goes back several months. It wasn't possible at one point, but then when the opportunity became possible, for me and the club, we said, let's find a way to do this.
Good.
It wasn't an immediate,
So it
sign.
took some time before you settled for
Because
Gor.
you have to find, it wasn't, the desire to come was always there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, you have to try and find the right agreement, the right circumstances, the right moment for everybody. And yeah, I'm really pleased that we were able to get it done. This was a job, like I said, I'd been interested in for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the interest was mutual. Gor were interested in me, I was interested in Gor, and that made the negotiations quite straightforward.
Na mtazamaji, tuko naye kocha mkuu wa timu ya Gor Mahia. Tunavuta unyunyu, tukirejea nataka tumjue kwa undani. Kocha ana mke, kocha ana mpango wa kando, kocha anakula nini hapa Kenya? Tunazama, tukirejea hayo na mengi zaidi. Karibu tena mtazamaji katika kipindi chako cha Rocho Live, na kama uko na pendekezo, uko na wazo, basi wakati wako ndio huu. Tuwasiliane kupitia Facebook, Twitter na Instagram, manake tuko naye kocha mkuu wa timu ya Gor Mahia. Anasema amekuwa na Kogalo zaidi ya miaka 7. Coach, I'm just reminding them that your history with Gor Mahia goes back 7 years back when you introduced Tuisenge. But let's move on. Coach, are you married? You're a family man back home? And do you have any, we call them here mpango wa kando, that is a girlfriend away from home? Let's start with your family. Do you have a family?
So not married, but in a long-term relationship. My partner works for the International Red Cross. So unfortunately, we don't often get the opportunity to work in the same place. In fact, she's arriving here next week for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And we were very fortunate in Uganda. She was able to be stationed in Uganda at the same time I was. And who knows, currently she's stationed in Venezuela in South America. Mm-hmm. But at the end of this sort of contract in the middle of 2023, we're hopeful there might be the opportunity for her to station in Kenya after that. So we have to see. But yeah, no, we've been together for a number of years now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, in terms of, anything.
Yes, while you walk around in Kenya, have you come across something that has attracted you? A lady or a girlfriend?
No, I know we talked about cultures earlier, and culture's quite different. So, from where we are, we're sort of, we have the person we're committed to.
Wow.
And we go with that, even though it's challenging at times because of the distance.
Yes.
But I think, when you have that serious relationship, people can make things work.
Ladies, the coach is taken at the moment. Ladies in Kenya, stay away from the coach. Naona wengine wanaanza kutuma harafa hapa. SMSs are coming in, coach. I'm saying, guys, ladies would like to know more about that. But we've told them, coach is taken. Now, what is your projection with Gor Mahia? For the last 10 or so years, Gor Mahia performed so well, winning leagues year in, year out. But there have been a dry spell now for about 2 to 3 years. Gor Mahia has not won the league. What do you tell Gor Mahia fans?
I think for us, we're working 100% flat out to take us back to that level. There's no doubt that that is the level Gor need to be at, and the fans rightly have that expectation. I have that expectation. But we also know that we find ourselves in a difficult moment. Now, I knew that coming into the job. I knew we're not able to sign new players until the new year. I knew that a number of players maybe have left over the last year and we haven't been able to replace them. But what we do have is a talented group of young players coming up. Now, the nature is that young players will make mistakes and it takes time. But for me, it's a really exciting period to say, look, let's focus on what we have. Let's not worry about the challenge of it. Let's focus on what we have in-house. Let's take them up 3 or 4 levels so that when we do have the opportunity to bring outside talent in, it means we have this great combination and again we can push and challenge for the league. But I think we also have to understand, look, last season we were under the same challenges as we are today. But the team were only maybe 2 or 3 victories away from winning the league last season. So I think that shows you the level of quality we do have in-house, that even when we're not able to recruit from outside, like all of our challengers in the KPL, that we're still right on the fringes of winning the league. So for us again this season, it's about keeping close to those teams who, let's be honest, are spending a lot more money than us because we can't. We simply can't. You know, Tusker, Bandari, we even see the likes of
KCB,
and Police FC are coming in and spending a lot of money and recruiting very well. So the question is without recruitment, can we stay close to them? Can we be competitive at the top of the league? And then at the point where we can recruit, do so wisely. Because I think everyone would agree that over the last 18 months, 2 years, the recruitment that has happened, especially from outside of Kenya, hasn't been fantastic. The players that have come in have maybe been sat on the bench. If you're signing a foreign player, he cannot be on the bench.
Surely.
He has to make a difference. And you look at someone like Peter Lawasa, who we do have, is a difference maker. We talked about Jack Tuasenge in the past, a difference maker. And for us, already our scouting is rolling out so that we know in January, we don't get to January 1st and think, who are we going to sign? We already know by that stage. But the great opportunity we have right now is for those young players. They know they've got the next several months to work with me and the staff and prove to us that they can learn, they can develop, and they're good enough to be in the starting 11 regardless of who we can sign. And so for me, that's a great opportunity. It's a challenge, but can we turn that challenge into an opportunity? And that's what we're doing. So for us, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy the next 6 months. I think there's going to be a lot of tight games. I think historically we know last season, Gor, out of the top 12 teams, Gor were the lowest goal scorers. You have to go to the 13th place team to find a team who scored less goals than Gor Mahia last season, and we finished 3rd. So we know there's challenges there. We've got to find creative solutions to those challenges. But the one thing the fans can know and they can expect when they come to the stadiums is they're going to have guys out there wearing green or white, giving everything to get the result.
What do you think of our the standards of our game? Now that you've traversed Africa, you've been in Sierra Leone, you've seen what is happening in Uganda and of course Rwanda. What do you think about our levels?
I think the great thing here in Kenya is it's so competitive. You go to some of these other leagues, you go to Uganda, and the league title almost every year is Vipers or KCCA. You might get Express showing recently they had 1 season, but the next season they dropped off massively. So it's in essence a 2-team league. You go to Rwanda, again, you see it will usually be Rayon Sport or it will be APR, a 2-team league for the most part. You go to Tanzania, again, Simba Yanga, Azam push, but they are the 3rd team. Whereas you come here to Kenya, And you see there are, right until the final weeks of the season, there are 4, 5, 6 teams competing for the chance to either win the league or to go into CAF competitions. So I think that is the huge strength of Kenyan football, is that it is so competitive across 5 or 6 teams. And that helps the game grow, because if you have that competition, more teams are encouraged to invest, more teams are encouraged to push, and it just brings the level up so much. So I think that's the great benefit here in Kenya. I think if over time we can invest in more facilities here, that will help that competition blossom into even more talent. But I do think the one thing here maybe that is a stumbling block, and it isn't news to anybody, is that facilities can be somewhat limited. Because yes, we have some nice match facilities, stadiums, but we're not training at Nyayo Stadium. We're not training at the new stadium in Kiambu town. So not only do we need to invest in stadia, we need to invest Monday to Friday, because Monday to Friday is where we do our work. That's where players develop. And I think if we can add that piece to the jigsaw, we can really see Kenya take off to be one of the top competing nations on the continent.
As we wind up, Coach, the World Cup is coming up in 2 months or so. First of all, which team do you see doing well in the World Cup? And do you have any specific team?
The World Cup's going to be really interesting. I think it being played in what are the traditional winter months for the European nations is going to see, Europe are always strong, there's no doubt about that. And even you can add to that, because if you think about it, let's take Senegal, who are clearly Africa's flagship team at the moment. But the majority of Senegal's players, if not all of them, are playing for European teams. So again, normally a World Cup at the end of the season where players are fatigued, because you look at most of the top players for the top nations are maybe also involved in the Champions League final, the Europa League final, or competing to the last game of the season to win their domestic title. This year they're going to come in much more fresh to a Qatari World Cup, which I think is going to be interesting. I expect the level of football to be much higher at this World Cup, because not only are the players fresher, but also the travel inside Qatar is so much less. Players don't have to move hotels. They're going to be 15, 20 minutes maximum from the venues that they're training at and playing at. So I expect a really high quality World Cup, and I think that's going to throw up some surprises, because the energy levels are going to be really high. I really do hope the African representatives break that glass ceiling and get into the semi-finals. And my golden rule is, if you can get to a semi-final, you can win it. You can win the trophy. So because at that stage, what suspensions do you have? What injuries do you have? All of these little things come into play. And if you can get to a semi-final with your full first 11 available to you, you've got a really great chance of going on and winning the tournament.
So which team?
It's a tough one. I do think Senegal have the ability to go the distance. I really do. You need a bit of luck to win a World Cup. I think is it Sarr is now injured. He's going to miss the World Cup for Senegal, which is unfortunate. But they've got a real chance. I think obviously the French team is still very strong as well. Very strong. Is doing so well. Yeah, and look, the perennial underachievers of the English national team.
That's where I was going.
And I think.
What do you think of the English national team?
Look, I think if you read the media in England, you think they're the worst team in the world. The media in England sometimes are highly critical of them, very critical of Gareth Southgate, so unfairly. Because if you think they got to a World Cup semi-final, they then got to a European Championship final, and the quality of young players coming into the English national team is huge. So I think they, again, have a real chance, but it will just depend. The Premier League, how often is it that England get hit with an injury or something happens before a tournament? So if they can go with a full-strength team, then again, they can have a lot of potential going into the tournament.
Coach, as we pen off, which is your best meal in Kenya? Do you have any special meal that you like?
I've tried various things since I've arrived. I'm a big believer in trying the local cuisine. So I've tried ugali. It's not necessarily, I don't mind it, but if I had the choice of anything, I probably wouldn't go for it. I do like going for Nyama Choma. I think the way I like to relax on my day off, if my day off's on a Sunday, generally I quite like the environment in Kenya. You have a lot of these sort of garden facilities, garden restaurants, sort of where you can maybe go and relax. You can have sort of wet or dry fry and chapati. You can have Nyama Choma. You can have 1 or 2 drinks. You can watch the football. You can relax, and I like that environment. Okay.
Ugali.
Yeah, ugali's okay. I've had it. But it's the same thing. Look, it was the same thing all over. You know, whether it was fufu in West Africa, whether it was matoke in Uganda, all of these things. If I was at your house and you served it to me, I would 100% eat it.
Thank you.
I've got no problem.
Thank you very much, Coach. Thank you very much for your time, and all the best, Coach.
Thank you.
We'll be looking forward to see your performance in the upcoming league. Asante
you.
sana mtazamaji. Amekuwa ni kocha mkuu wa timu ya Gor Mahia Johnathan, ambaye anasema Gor Mahia inakuja kwa kishindo msimu ambao unakuja. Shukrani za dhati kwako wewe kwa kutizama kipindi hichi cha Arocho Live. Hadi wiki inayokuja, Sablagia.